Today we're going to do an uncut speedrun. We're going to speedrun the explosion of a Gigabyte power supply. We're not going to have any cuts in this video, including the ad break. And the whole point of this is going to be to address something that Gigabyte said in its press release. Gigabyte, when responding to an issue that we covered recently about the power supplies detonating, said something very simple. It said that the testing was done over an extended period of time, and it kept saying over and over again that we were basically putting it under extreme load scenarios. Now, technically, Gigabyte said certain media outfits. It was afraid to name us. That's okay. I would be too if I were Gigabyte. But it really meant us, because we most recently tested it, and before us, Aris from Hardware Busters did the testing back in October and November, found the same issue, and I believe Igor's lab has found the same problem as well. Problem is, when you hit OPP, or in the process of approaching OPP, which is overpower protection, the power supply, instead of shutting down like it should, which is what a protection mechanism does, will explode. And like we said in the previous video, it is no longer a protection if, in order to prevent an explosion, you preemptively explode it. That's still a catastrophic failure. That's not how it's supposed to work. So we're going to do testing on this live, basically, uncut, and see how quickly we can make this one explode to address Gigabyte's repeated statements of extended lengths of time and other mischaracteristic things they've said about our testing. So I'm going to take this in, hand this off to Patrick Stone, and he will hook it up to the DC load tester.
Yes.
And we'll provide some commentary too. Now, as we get into this video is brought to you by Corsair and the 5000D, and that is a case that we tested very positively. It has an airflow version and a solid version. We've liked the airflow version. You can grab that at the link in the description below if you're trying to build a higher-end mid-tower gaming PC. Okay, so Stone, do you want to explain the basics of what you're doing right now?
Indeed, yeah. So what I'm doing right now is just connecting all of the modular cables into the power supply, and they've already been connected to our SM8800 load tester. The load tester's already been configured for the correct loads. We're doing 20%, then 60%, then 100%, and then we'll go over those 100% values at 110, 120, 130, 140. Hopefully, these things will all trip at somewhere in that 130 to 140 range. Right. If not, that's even more bad news for Gigabyte.
Yes.
But so we got it all plugged in here, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and switch things on. So we just go to our
Variac.
Yeah, Variac, our input regulator, and then from there it goes to the SM8800, and then the SM8800 has a SM220 electronic load on there. Also make sure to switch on the power supply, and that's good. And then we turn this guy on, and when we turn the SM8800 on, we should be able to look at the input voltage, and it's at 116, so we'll go up here
to the Variac.
To the Variac, and we'll adjust it down to 115. That's what it's spec'd for, is 115.
So the whole point of the Variac is to help us adjust for voltage coming from the wall.
That's right, yeah, changing loads, yeah, because you can guess that it's 115 or 120, but better to know.
Yeah.
And so then if we look at the current settings right now, I'm at my first little piece, I'm at 20%, and it's not turned on yet, and you can tell that by switching down here, looking at the voltage, no
Zero.
voltage except for 5 VSB. And so as soon as we turn this guy on, here with the power supply on button, you see the fan spin up, and you see voltage values, and we'll let it sit here for, I don't know, like maybe a minute.
Sure.
And just hit this little stopwatch action.
Yeah, and a note here too. So our testing methodology we explained in the first piece, talks about it a little bit more in the response to Gigabyte, where they tried to, Gigabyte was very strange in that response. If you haven't seen it, they basically said, this is the fault of users and reviewers who are doing it wrong, and ignored one very important point. Clearly there's a lot of failures here without people ever going over power, because if you look at the Newegg reviews, there's a lot of DOA.
Yep.
and there's a lot of quick failures. So they didn't really address that. They retargeted the story specifically on overpower because they knew they could make it sound like it's ridiculous, and they're hoping that people reading the press release will think, I'm never going to go past 750 watts, so I'm not worried about it.
Yep.
But you should still be worried about it, to be very clear. The other thing we're addressing, point 2, is, again, just the fact that they're trying to kind of paint this as a ridiculous thing. But in actuality, there's a lot of caveats here, but you can always spike above the expected load of your system in very brief intervals. Like when you first launch a heavy load application with a GPU, we've plotted them before. You'll catch a spike that goes way beyond even the TDP of the GPU, but it's only for a few milliseconds maybe. And stuff like that can be a bad scenario for the power supply if it's not designed for it.
Yeah. So while you were talking there, I went ahead and jumped from 20% to 60%. And you can see that because of the increased load, the fan kicked on to cool this guy down. Didn't think about it, but maybe this is a good idea to stand the power supply up like this, so when the sparks come out, if they do, they shoot toward us.
I was just about to suggest you don't do that.
It's a great idea, right?
But it would make better video.
Great video?
Yes. That's definitely true. I will make sure insurance doesn't see this video or any of the other ones in the series.
Looking at the voltage coming out of this PSU, you can see that at 60%, things look similar to what we had at 20%. And if we look at the current levels, you can see that the current's jumped up on the 12-volt rail significantly. Not so much on the 5 and the 12 VSB. Sorry, the 5 and the 3.3 and the 5 VSB.
Right.
As we stop that one and jump to 100% load, you can see I've got those current values. This is just about as high as we're going to go on 5, 3.3, and 5 VSB. We'll bump these two numbers up just a little bit when we go for the real overpower protection. But these numbers, the 12-volt rail, is what we're really going to be pushing, because that's what happens with your PSU, like if you're going to be using it.
To re-emphasize the point here, the numbers that people are looking at on the screen, so 11, 11, 11, 9, 9, 9, it's current.
That's right, yeah.
Right. Just to make sure that's clear. And for people who aren't aware, watts, current times volts, gives you watts, and so we're loading each rail a little bit differently.
Exactly right. Yeah, so if we look at the voltages, again, we can see the voltages here. And we've also got the SM800 is a nice feature where you can just pop that on and you can tell how much power is being pulled. So right now we have 750 watts coming out of this guy.
Right.
And so now we'll just jump into probably something like 10-second phases for the overpower. So we're going to jump to 110%. You can see the power number jumps up. And then if you're interested, you can see the voltages. Note that we were higher than this originally, and it's not uncommon to see voltage drop down as you increase the load. And then you can see the values here. Again, these guys stayed the same, and these guys jumped up. As we go to 120%, you can see again, same. These guys are jumping up. And if we look at the wattage, now we're up to 900 watt pull out of this thing.
And I want to explain a few things too while we get into this. So first, on the testing side, we are changing our testing a little bit in this video, not in a significant way. The only thing we're changing is the sort of the amount of increments we're doing in percentages as we approach our test for where does OPP trip. The reason we're doing that is simply because it's all the same. We're just saving everybody time. So, and they're not necessary steps. It doesn't, if anything, right now what we're doing benefits Gigabyte, because this approach is putting it under less thermal load, because we're not testing it for as long.
Exactly.
So it's actually, Gigabyte, we're giving the full benefit of the doubt by decreasing the test time. So it's in a better position. So did that just shut down?
It did, at 140%. A few seconds in, 140% it shut down. And we can tell that not only by looking at the voltage numbers here. You can see the voltages are all dropping off like crazy. This thing just shut off.
Fans turned off.
Right, exactly. And so now what I'll do is I'll turn the power supply off. I'll hit the power supply off button on the tester, and I'll even kill the AC in on the tester.
Okay.
And then, so the next thing to do is, okay, so it tripped. Now I wanted to see what was the exact trip point. It was somewhere between 130 and 140, so now I've got to go back to 130, and then I've got to step up little bits at a time to figure out what's going on.
Right. Is this where you normally leave it off for a few minutes?
So in this case, I would probably leave it off if it got warm. Right now, this is still fine in terms of temperature.
Yeah, I mean, again, we didn't really run it that long. So.
Right, and we're trying to increase the amount of, decrease the amount of time we're taking here.
Right.
So, I'm going to go ahead and flip things back on, turn the SM800 back on, flip the power supply back on, and I've got to bring the load back to the 20% level. So now I'm back over here at 20%, and I can verify that by looking at the current again. Yeah. And then I will turn the power supply back on, and we can see the fan flips on momentarily. Yeah. And I think it's probably going to shut off again because it's only at 20% load.
Once we start getting towards a potential catastrophic failure, let's change the direction of that fan.
Okay.
Because even though it would be better video, commenters are going to question my judgment, even though you're the one who did that. So we should explain overpower protection a little bit. I don't know at what point in this process you might have a good opportunity to spend a minute on talking about why it exists and what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, so in theory, that moment would come after this trips again.
If it doesn't explode.
Yeah.
And if it does explode, we'll explain it after.
There you go.
Okay,
right, yeah. So I'm at 100% load. I'm not going to stay there long. I'm going to go straight up to 110 and then 120 after a few seconds. And then I'm going to jump to 130.
Andrew, you might want to make sure the power supply is not shot at this point.
All right, and then now that I'm at 130, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump over to a different rail. I'm going to go over to my 5-volt rail, and I'm just going to push that up in terms of current. There we go. I want about 10 amps is what I want on that, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the 3.3 volt rail. Just push that up 10%. This is exactly what we did on the previous test, so no changes here. And then the next thing to do is to go back to the 12-volt rails and just start increasing them one at a time.
Right.
And I'm not going to spend much time on these. I'm just going to go, I'm going to hit maybe 15 hundredths of an amp on each rail, or on each split of the 12-volt rail. And I'm not going to stay on there long. I'll let it flash maybe 3 or 4 times for a few seconds. And then I'm going to go to the next one, do the same thing.
Well, let's make sure power supply, you got it in the shot. Okay, cool.
And then this one, same kind of thing. All right, and then the next one. And what I would do generally is I would be using my spreadsheet right now, and I would be documenting on the spreadsheet each spot that passed.
Right.
So I would say, okay, I passed here, passed here, passed here, passed here, pass, and then I'm going to go right back around again, and I'm going to go to the next level. And so...
Yeah, and to be clear, as Stone is saying here, but testing for the lab for reviews that are produced, written, edited, we have a lot of note-taking. We have a developed process we follow. We have SOPs we follow. We have specific times we follow, so everything's very controlled. But again, here the whole point is to address Gigabyte's claims of extended testing and show that they are factually incorrect. Especially considering the actual load time of this is relatively low.
Still looking good at the moment. We are surviving.
And should say this too, Stone, the OPP, it is not good if it's set too high.
That's right,
I think it's really common misconception where, and I used to think this too, by the way, where
same.
So people think that power supply can push a lot of power without failure, without shutting down. So say it can go to 150%. That's actually not good, because the chance of a catastrophic failure goes up. Potentially the degree to which it fails gets worse, and you really want it to shut down earlier in the range, closer to its spec. So where are we now for your test setup.
So this is just like basically my third step along on the 12-volt rail. If I have my spreadsheet pulled up, I could tell you exactly what the 12-volt rail max was. It looks like it just tripped again, which is good.
Do you need me to look something up?
Yeah, if you'll go to the 4th tab on the top.
And this we can't show.
Sorry, at the very top there. The 4th tab over should be large font. Maybe the next one over there. I got one of them on huge font there.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so the 140% was 16 amps per rail. And you can see now that I didn't get there. Like, so when I hit the 140% button, it completely shut down with OPP, which is good. And then to get to exactly where it was, I just do little steps like this. And now I can add these numbers up to get an exact OPP trip point for this particular unit.
Right.
And so
what
generally, I would say, like right now, this unit passed OPP correctly. Because we were able to take it to OPP, trip, and then we were able to dial in to exactly where OPP was.
Needs to be able to do it again, though.
And trip. Yeah.
Right.
And so now that it has successfully done the tripping, I'm just going to bring it back online after like another minute or two.
Right.
At like 60%, because 60% is very common for a PC.
Right.
And then hopefully it's just going to keep running right along with no problems.
Right. We did have one explode at 60% though.
Indeed, we
process.
did. Yeah. So
successfully done the tripping, by the way, is the name of my Pink Floyd cover band.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice. Okay. So I'm going to go back to 60% load right there, and the power supply got switched off, and the power supply on signal from here got switched off, and it's not even really warm to the touch, so I don't have any real worry about did things get ridiculous inside this power supply. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this guy back on, and then hit this power supply on button.
Oh, fuck. That was the most impressive one. We're going to get a blast shield for future ones. I think I'm going to get a blast shield to go in that station. Is that expected behavior, Stone? That's what they're supposed to do, right?
After this one worked well,
oh my god!
Which like that OPP testing that we just did,
yeah,
with like on the other power supplies that are not Gigabyte GP-P750 GMs.
There's some black soot flying around in the air, just flew in front of my face.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check the security camera footage for that one. We got a quick camera in the corner.
I'm just gonna.
Why?
Yeah, just in case. I don't know.
What, are you scared? Maybe they sent this unit to kill us. I don't know. That's the most impressive one. So this, I don't know if we bought this one on Newegg or got it from a viewer. This is
one of the ones we purchased on Newegg.
And it's within the serial number range.
Yeah.
Which, by the way,
our other Patrick went ahead and did the research for us and found out that which ones are returnable or not.
Right. And so, separate video for this, but Gigabyte has been refusing warranties and RMAs from what we've seen so far from you all. Those of you who've emailed us about your warranty attempts with Gigabyte, we'll cover that separately. Put some pressure on them to replace it, but anyway, this...
Can I go back though? Like,
yes,
all right,
let's go back.
So, again, it tripped at 140, which it's supposed to. Like that if every one of these, the ones that have been successful and the ones that have failed, tripped at 140, no problem.
Right.
And then dialing it back in to find out the exact OPP trip point at 130. This one looked like it was maybe like 134, 132, somewhere in there.
Right, right.
And that's an acceptable trip point. It's not great, but it's acceptable. And then from there, like I honestly thought that I was going to turn it on at 60% and it was going to be fine.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, yeah. Can I...
I was not ready for that.
Well, I'm going to say one thing. I'm glad I had you turn that up. It looked like it shot electricity, not fire. Like, it looks
the
like
blue flames.
So yeah, that was. I don't know if our camera's high speed enough to catch that, but between this and security, hopefully we got something. Okay, so
so the failure rate that we had in lab here was like 50% or so.
right,
and I honestly do hope that when we plug in the next one here, we've got another one that we
and we'll save that for another time. We don't need to do that today.
I think we've got this 22377, 22400. So these are like really close in serial number.
Right.
And like maybe this one won't fail, right? But after seeing that, maybe it will fail.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So we need to wrap up, say a couple quick things here. Let's make sure everyone's clear on what just happened and why it is valid testing. There's a couple points to bring up. Gigabyte kept using the phrase DC electronic load over and over and over in their press release.
Okay.
I'll say this. Stone is maybe a little less skeptical than I am of these companies. I've been in this industry a long time. When I read that, what I see is, let's try to make this look ridiculous by showing users it's not real world, kind of like how Intel does when it loses in benchmarks, and then when it doesn't, it likes them again. So they kept saying DC electronic load. We should very quickly address that. And at this point, by the way, if we have cuts in the video, there might be some here to speed it up, because you're going to hit a 30-minute limit at some point, right?
21 right now.
All right. And but it's already exploded, so I think we can cut at this point. So DC electronic load, can we quickly recap why that's not like some evil boogeyman or something that they're trying to make it seem?
So this is electronic.
Yes.
And it's pulling DC out of the power supply.
That's right.
It's very complex, very complicated.
Would you agree with the statement, and this is complex algebra, if power is X, okay, so we're defining power, the variable, as X. Does X equal X? Is power power?
I think that would be an accurate statement.
I'm pretty sure that's accurate. So in other words, your computer wants power, your video card wants power.
DC power.
Right. AC comes out of the wall, and
converted to DC.
Right, and then the cable's terminating at the load tester over here.
It's almost like your computer's a DC electronic load.
Almost.
Almost.
It's almost like Gigabyte uses DC electronic load testers, as does its factory, in the production of every single one of its power supplies. That's weird. I wonder why they don't like it now that we're using it.
Yeah.
Is my acting okay? Did it seem like I was actually confused? I think it was pretty good.
It's pretty good.
So all right, so we've addressed that. Power is power. Computer wants power. This thing wants power. It's all the same. And by the way, a realistic quote-unquote workload, as in a computer, is potentially more stressful than this is, because the load is much more variable. You have a lot more, there's potentially more transients, there's more peaks, and the amplitude of sort of the demand changes. So it's actually maybe even worse.
Yeah, and I'll throw one last thing in here. Aris has clearly been doing this longer than we have. Right?
Aris is an expert, like 100%.
Yeah, the company Cybenetics, if you guys haven't heard about them, maybe go look them up. They've got some good stuff out there. And his point was that the problem is probably with the timings of the controller that controls the MOSFETs.
Right.
And so it's not like this thing just has a small issue. There's a design issue, and I think he said that in his video. And so, go check out his statement. Don't just take my word for it. And
he published the whole statement. He wrote it, sent it to us. It ended up published on Tech Power Up, so they've got it. You can read the whole thing. Another contact in the industry that we can't name, but also believe that there might be a thermal management issue on the MOSFETs specifically. And part one showed what specific components failed if you want to see the MOSFETs that failed.
Right.
And additionally, Gigabyte said it's adjusting OPP down right, to like 110 to 120%. Aris said, hey, that's not possible. That's too tight of a range. And I read that statement in our response part 2 video. Additionally, it seems like maybe that's not the only problem with this power supply because, again, the user reviews indicate that there's a lot of people with dead or failing ones. Not all of these people are going to OPP and then back. Oh, I should say that too. Gigabyte kept saying repeatedly. They kept saying we were repeatedly testing them for long periods of time.
Oh yeah. No, like this is what you just saw is what we did.
Yeah.
It's not like we're just like OPP test. Do it again.
Yeah, it's not like we
do it again.
Like
do it again.
Right.
No, that's not what we're doing.
We should re-emphasize one point here too. So out of all the failures, the rest of the power supplies we've tested failed on the way up to OPP trigger point testing, whereas this one, only one other one we tested failed in this manner where it hit 60% load after an OPP trigger and then died. Is there anything else we want to say?
I have to believe that Gigabyte can do a better job.
Yeah.
We are always trying to work with the companies to say, hey, we found something in your product, and you probably should check this out. And then when they work with us on it, products get better.
Right.
And then, maybe it's not a big story for us, but that's okay. What we're trying to do is review products for all the end users anyway.
We just did this with another power supply. It's not, you'll see it online soon, but we were able to change their marketing before we produced the video. They probably saw this series and went, oh no. Aris emailed Gigabyte in October before he published a review. They had a chance to fix it. We emailed Gigabyte, I don't know, in March or something. Originally we were talking to them, and then again in June. They had like 6 months with us, almost a year between the reviewer community. And the response to Aris was basically, nope, we don't see it. Don't see the problem. Conveniently, I don't know if you caught on to this, but Aris did. Gigabyte said they tested their power supplies to OPP and they succeeded. They never said that they turned them back on.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, well, if you only do half the test, yeah, great.
Well, and I think you mentioned too that maybe that could be one of the reasons why some of the units came out as DOA.
Right. If they tested it at the line and then it shipped, a customer plugs it in, turns it on.
And then it does what we just saw.
Yeah, I can't speak to Gigabyte and their factory standards, but I have been in power supply factories, and we have talked to a lot of them, done tours with them, all this stuff. Everyone I'm aware of tests when 100% of the units off the line to make sure they meet some spec. So if they're testing 100% of the units and including an OPP test, maybe that's the source of the DOAs. I don't know, but I think that covers it.
Can I get you to touch this capacitor?
That sounds questionable, but okay.
It'll just make your hair stand up for a few seconds.
Yeah, I think. Oh, by the way, don't open power supplies. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do that.
Don't do this.
And he's got to do other stuff to even work on this anyway, because they're potentially unsafe. So, is there an obvious failure?
Ooh.
Do we save that for a different video?
This is the main switchers, definitely.
We'll do a B-roll shot of this. We're going to cut in B-roll. At this point, it's already failed, so we can do cuts.
The front end of the capacitors is missing. Not capacitors, the
let's take B-roll of this separately. We'll drop it in. We'll talk about this more in another video, but that'll wrap it for this one. Thanks for watching the speed run. We enjoyed it. He might need to change his pants from the reaction I saw. And,
I honestly was expecting it to work. Like I really was.
I was like, I don't know if this one's gonna fail.
That's what I thought. That was exactly what I thought.
So that'll wrap it. If you want to support us and our work we do here and the purchase of new underwear for Patrick Stone, you can go to store.gamersnexus.net and grab one of our mouse mats, mod mats, or other items there, shirts. or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus. We've got behind-the-scenes videos talking about this testing. He's hosted several of them, and you can check those out. It's a great way to support us and our work, and also get something in return. Thanks for watching.